If you are destined for something, you will get it no matter what. And this movie is a perfect example of that. Hello and welcome back to Every Recap Ever. Today we are seeing a Japanese movie called Destiny: Tales of Kamakura. So without wasting any time, let's get started. This is a story from the 1980s, where a newly married couple, Ishiki and Akiko, returns from their honeymoon. Ishiki is from the rural town Kamakura. It's Akiko's first time living away from the city. Ishiki is a novelist and apparently he is past his deadline. The publisher is eagerly waiting for his article. Akiko gets worried about him and tries to encourage him. In the end, he manages to give his article on time and takes a sigh of relief. Suddenly, Akiko sees a weird creature running in their front yard. She is a little shocked and scared at the same time. However, Ishiki tells her that it is a spirit and it is a common occurrence in their town. Apparently, Kamakura town has an ancient history, and for thousands of years, people have been living with spirits. The next day, Ishiki gets ready to leave for his work. Akiko is still not over the spirit encounter and feeling scared. He calms her down and asks her to not go into the storage room, and this piques her curiosity. In the end, she goes inside the storage room, which is filled with weird-looking things from ancient times. There she stumbles upon some old literature and... Her name is Aunt Kin, and she has been serving this household for 3 generations. Aunt Kin then explains that Ishiki's parents died when he was a child. He basically never opens up his heart to anyone, except Akiko. She then asks Akiko to keep taking care of him. Later that evening, Ishiki returns from his work and sees Aunt Kin. He forgot to tell Akiko about her, so he asks for her forgiveness. Later, Akiko shows the literature she found at the storage room. Apparently, it belongs to a famous novelist Kitaki, and Ishiki is shocked to learn that it was kept in his storehouse. To make it up to her, he decides to take her for a walk. While taking a stroll, Akiko spots a flea market and drags Ishiki to check it out. It is basically a night market where spirits sell things from other worlds. However, Akiko doesn't believe it and thinks they are just cosplaying. A familiar woman, Mrs. Yuto, greets him. Apparently, she is here to buy some things for her husband. Later, Akiko finds some weird mushroom from a shady spirit and decides to buy it. Outside, Ishiki finally tells her that Mrs. Yuto is actually a spirit. She died a few years ago. I mean, it's difficult for Akiko to digest this, but Yuko herself confirms it. She basically made a deal with the Bureau of Death to let her stay as a spirit for a while to take care of her husband. Akiko has no option left but to finally accept the existence of spirits. She promises Ishiki that even if she dies one day, she will make the same deal with Bureau to stay with him. The next day, Akiko prepares a miso soup using the mushrooms she bought at the market. Ishiki drinks the soup and the next second loses consciousness. His soul starts leaving his body, but Aunt Kin comes in time and reverts the soul back to his body. She finds out the mushrooms are poisonous and living beings should not consume them. Akiko accidentally tasted the soup while preparing and starts worrying about the same outcome. However, Aunt Kin asks her to wear a mask to stop her soul from letting out. Later, a police officer visits Ishiki's house. However, Ishiki reveals that works for the supernatural department for the police. Since there are many spirits living among humans in their town, the police headquarters decided to form this department. Apparently, the police are here to seek help regarding a case of a woman's death. After some investigation, they manage to find the culprit, which turns out to be her husband. Ishiki tells Akiko about the case, and she starts wondering why her husband did it. Ishiki tries to tell her that not all couples are lovey-dovey like them. He accidentally mentions his parents as an example, and this makes Akiko curious. She starts insisting him to tell her about his past, and this ends up in an argument. Ishiki goes to a bar to clear his mind and starts regretting getting angry at Akiko. While returning, he sees Mrs. Yuto with her husband. Apparently, he has finally died and the death agent is here to take them to the other side, and ask Ishiki to be there when they depart for the other side. They will be leaving at 12 that night through a supernatural train. He quickly goes to his home and brings Akiko to a hill near the abandoned station. Ishiki finally tells her about his past. Apparently, one day he saw his mother meeting another man named Katoki, the famous author. Soon after his mother died, his father couldn't take the impact and he also took his life. He started hating his mom and lost all his trust from love until he met Akiko. They then finally say their goodbyes to Mrs. Yuko and her husband, and their train disappears into thin air. Few days later, Ishiki goes to meet his friend Honda, who is suffering from a critical illness. He doesn't want to leave his wife and daughter. Suddenly, Ishiki remembers that he can make a deal with the Death Bureau and ask them for some time before leaving for the other side. Meanwhile, some entity secretly enters Ishiki's house. Soon after, everything starts going wrong, and even he almost loses his life. It's as if the sudden misfortune comes over their house. Aunt Kin finds it suspicious and tells Ishiki that some spirit might have entered their house. Ishiki manages to find the spirit, which turns out to be the god of misfortune, and he accidentally entered their house. Ishiki asks him to leave immediately, but Akiko stops him and offers him to stay at their house for some days. I mean, according to her, they are already poor, so misfortune will not affect them so much. Later, Akiko offers him warm food and shows great hospitality. It was the first time that someone has welcomed the god of misfortune with such warmness. On the other side, Ishiki goes to the hospital and sees that Honda has already passed away. However, there is just one problem. So according to the agent, due to so many requests, the bureau has currently stopped giving spirit the grace period. But there is another way, but the agent suggests this way will permanently change Honda's body. He accepts the deal as long as it makes him stay in this world. Later that day, Honda visits Ishiki, but apparently he has turned into a frog-like spirit. He can't go to meet his family in such a state, so he asks for Ishiki's help. They secretly drop some money to his house to help Honda's wife pay off their debt. On the other side, the god of misfortune receives a request to enter someone's house. He offers an old bowl from his belonging to the Akiko for all the hospitality. For the first time, he has felt like having a family. He leaves their house, which makes Akiko sad. Few days later, Ishiki and Honda see an unknown man seeing off his wife. This makes Honda sad, and they go to the bar to venture out his sadness. Akiko receives an urgent call from the publisher, and she rushes to find Ishiki. Someone grabs her feet and she falls on the ground. Still, she wakes up and manages to find Ishiki outside the bar. She tells him that the deadline for his novel is tomorrow, and Ishiki immediately rushes to the house. Akiko realizes that her wedding ring is missing and goes to the spot where she fell. However, she doesn't find it. Few days later, Honda started to keep a watch on his wife. He ends up in a Disneyland where he sees the new man with his family. He accidentally bumps into a woman who looks like Akiko. Later, he tells Ishiki about the woman, but they brush it off thinking she might be some look-alike. Honda decides to test this man and goes to threaten him. However, it turns out he genuinely cares for Honda's wife and daughter. This makes him feel broken but happy that there is someone to take care of his wife. While talking with Ishiki in the bar, the bartender suddenly tells him that there might be a dead spirit looming around him. She gives Ishiki a charm and asks him to stick it at their entrance. He returns home and sees that Akiko is nowhere to be found. Suddenly, she appears behind him and tries to enter the house, but some kind of force field stops her. Ishiki finally realizes that Akiko is somehow turned into a spirit. So it turns out the night when she fell, her spirit snapped out of her body. The agent of death comes to take Akiko to the other side. This completely breaks Ishiki. He tries to make a deal with the agent and asks him to take some of his life force. Akiko doesn't want Ishiki to suffer because of her, so she asks the agent to put him to sleep. She keeps a note beside his bed saying goodbye and goes with the death agent and runs to stop Akiko. He hugs her tightly and asks to not go. However, it is not possible. She says her goodbyes with tears in her eyes and leaves. The next day, Agent comes to meet Ishiki and tells him that he has safely dropped Akiko to the other side. He accidentally tells him that it wasn't her time to die, which makes Ishiki more suspicious. So it turns out she wasn't supposed to die and Bureau was ready to put her spirit in her body again. However, her body was missing, so they couldn't do anything. Ishiki remembers Honda seeing Akiko in Disneyland. With the help of the supernatural department, he manages to find Akiko's body in a different neighborhood. So that night, a random spirit saw Akiko's body. That spirit wanted to go to Disneyland with her daughter before leaving for the other side. This makes Ishiki even more furious. The family says sorry and promises to return Akiko's body. Later, Ishiki decides to himself that he will save Akiko anyhow. He comes up with a plan to have that mushroom and detach his soul from his body. He asks Aunt Kin to take care of his body while he goes to the other side. He boards the train which takes the spirits to the other side. The death agent sees Ishiki and asks him to leave. However, he tells him that he has found Akiko's body and he needs his help to find her soul. After a long journey, Ishiki finally reaches the other side, which looks like some kind of town. The agent tells him an influential demon has apparently taken Akiko with him. They can't do anything since they don't have proof against him. While wondering, Ishiki comes across his mother's house. There he finds his mother with the famous writer Kataki. He is frustrated, but Kataki explains that he is his son. So it turns out, Kataki and his dad from the memories are the same person. Kataki's dad didn't want him to be a writer and pursue a stable job, so he rented a secret place where he used to go, change his disguise and write novels. His mother is the only one who supported him. After clearing his misunderstanding, Kataki asks for the reason for him coming to the other side. He tells them about Akiko. So Kataki explains that on the other side everyone possesses some type of powers, and in the case of Ishiki, it's his imagination. On the other side, Akiko is trapped in a fortress. Apparently, a demon was after her and all the things that happened in the human world were planned by him. He gives her some time to sign the marriage paper. Later, Ishiki manages to infiltrate the fortress and finds Akiko. However, the demon spots them. He gets furious when he sees Ishiki. He reveals that in every previous lives, Ishiki ended up with Akiko. He tried to get Akiko but failed every time. Ishiki takes a chance while he is yapping and jumps from the fortress. He uses his manifestation powers and creates a bridge to the station. The demon and his minions chase after him. After fending off against them, Ishiki literally manifests a train and boards it with Akiko. The chasing demon attacks the train with his powers and destroys it. He takes Ishiki as a hostage and blackmails Akiko to sign the marriage papers. In the grim moment, a bowl comes flying and saves them. The bowl then increases in size and takes the couple out of the spirit world. In the end, it's the bowl of the god of misfortune, which became fortune for them. With this, the couple's life comes back to normal and they start living happily again.